Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1537B, and today's date is April 5th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Wall is Much More Than Just a Wall. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded a new interview with David Modell. It is on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com or NewsCentral.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You can play the video right on the site. Or you can go over to Steemit, that is Steemit.com/@X22Report, and you can play the interview right on Steemit. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the case against Facebook is just getting worse and worse. Facebook has admitted that most of its 2.2 billion users could have had their public profiles scraped by third parties without their knowledge, and that the personal information of up to 87 million people was improperly shared with Cambridge Analytica. And the Menlo Park company admitted that it's been scanning private messages between individuals communicating through Messenger to make sure it follows the company's content rules. For example, on Messenger, when you send a photo, or automated systems scan it using photo matching technology to detect known child exploitation imagery, or when you send a link, we can scan it for malware or viruses. Do you really think that's all they're doing with scanning your messages or your photographs? Because as we can see, they scan and use this information for a completely different reason. They want to hear what people are talking about. They use it for elections. Companies use it, or government officials use it to blackmail certain individuals. This is being used for so many different reasons than what they're telling us. And Facebook right now they're at the point where they're blaming a bug for all of this. This is how they're trying to get out of it. Well, it was a bug in our system, and that's why this was happening. Of course, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of the responsibility for protecting everyone's data, because they didn't protect it. They sold it. They gave it away. They violated your privacy. And again, just like all these different tech companies, they don't want to be held responsible. Well, they are responsible. And once again, they were caught, and they're trying to wiggle their way out of this, and I don't think it's going to work this time. I think there's going to be regulations. I think there's going to be changes. I think companies are going to be brought down or broken up, just like Q says, and this is just the beginning stages. Now, we see out with the Skripal poisoning, things are really not looking good for the UK right now. First of all, Russia was denied request to join the OPCW investigation into the Skripal poisoning. Yulia and her father, Sergei, well, it looks like Yulia is up and talking right now. It looks like they're both healthy and in fine condition. It looks like they might even be discharged soon. And allegedly, there was a phone call with Yulia to her mother discussing what happened. And once again, Russia would like to ask Yulia what happened, what went down, what was going on. But again, the UK not releasing Yulia, and we don't know if this phone call was real. Was it put on? Was it actors? We have no clue at this point. But one thing that it does tell us is that they're awake and they are talking. And Russia now wants to speak to Yulia. She is a Russian citizen. So Russia has every right to speak to Yulia. Actually, Russia has every right to be involved in this case. But again, since there is no evidence and this is a false flag, what they have to do is they have to create the illusion that Russia is an enemy, that they're going around poisoning people. Didn't they do this with North Korea and Kim Jong-un's brother, where he was poisoned and they were turning around and blaming it on Kim Jong-un, trying to get something started? I mean, do we see patterns here? Well, the deep state works the same way each time. They don't know any better. All they know is, let's do the same thing, people won't catch on. But people do catch on now. It's called the internet. This is why they've been trying to shut it all down. This is why Facebook, Google, Twitter, YouTube, all the rest, this is why they've been shutting down the alternative media, because they don't want another explanation of what is happening. They want their narrative, their source, and you just must believe them. And we see right now, this is what's happening. People are reporting on it. People are asking questions. In an open and free society and freedom of the press, This is how it works. When you try to silence everyone or ban books, that's called a dictatorship. You're controlling speech. It's not free speech anymore, it's controlled speech. When you shut down people who are asking questions. And there's no distinction between hate, nice speak, or anything else. It's freedom of speech. The people will decide if something is hate speech, if something is not what they want to listen to. You know what they do? They don't listen anymore. So if someone is out there and they're pushing conspiracy theories, and people say, you know something, this is all fake, guess what? Nobody listens. Yes, people are smart enough to decide on their own if they want to listen or not listen. I mean, you're smart enough in your household to make a decision. Should I buy the car if I have enough money, or shouldn't I buy the car? I don't have enough money. Should I take this job or not take this job? But they're trying to control what people do. And by controlling, I mean getting rid of the other sources, which is controlling speech, because you're taking away that part of free speech and you're only allowing what they want you to hear. And our founding fathers, they didn't want this. That's why they said freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Didn't say only the corporate media is allowed to speak this way or report the news. It meant that anyone could, and anyone could give their opinion. If you don't like it, too bad. We see out in Asia, during the reign of all the other presidents, the U.S. has over 400,000 troops in Asia-Pacific region. The United States has deployed more than 200 military facilities in the Asian-Pacific region, and they were preparing for war. This was the whole purpose of all of this, because in the end, what they really wanted was war with Russia and China, to reset the system, to have an explanation of why everyone has to sacrifice for the greater good. You'll have to give up food. You'll have to give up pretty much everything. Fight the war. Send your families over. Have them get killed. You'll basically give up everything, all your rights, everything in this country. And in the end, what will happen is we'll move the economic system over to a different area. Your way of life will completely change. And we would have reduced the population all at the same time. This was their plan. This is why they've been setting up all these bases all over the place. And now what's going to happen is these bases eventually are going to be shut down and the troops are going to be brought home. There's no reason for it. The dollar's dying. The only reason they did this is because they had to protect the dollar over time. And the only way to do that is with force, because they didn't have an open and free system. It was a force system, do it our way or else. Now, Trump is maneuvering in Syria. He wants the allies to do more in Syria. He already shot up the first flare saying that we're going to be moving the troops out of Syria. And everyone went crazy. The corporate media went crazy. They're saying that he's retreating. He can't win the battle. No, there is no battle to win. This was created by the deep state. They created Al-Qaeda. They created the Islamic State. They created all these terrorist groups in all of these countries to have regime change. This is how it worked. Al-Qaeda was created because they needed a terrorist group. So they created a terrorist group, and 9/11 happened, and Al-Qaeda was out in all these countries. And basically, once regime change happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, they had different names for different terrorist groups. Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. And what they did was, okay, under the law that they passed where they can use drones to fight off Al-Qaeda, they said, okay, anywhere Al-Qaeda is, we can fight against them because it is a terrorist group. They attacked the United States, which they really didn't. These people, these Al-Qaeda terrorists, weren't terrorists. They were the people who were fighting against the puppet government that was placed in their country. And the United States, the deep state, called them Al-Qaeda so they could use force on them to maintain the puppet governments in those countries. Other countries where they want to remove the elected leader, like in Syria, they use the same terrorist groups. Think about it. Ooh, Al-Qaeda is in Syria. Then they create more. Ooh, there's an even more dangerous one, the Islamic State. Well, under the law, we can go into those countries. Now, remember, the U.S. was funding the moderate rebels. They were helping them all along. And they were really mixed in with Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State. All these terrorist groups and the Syrian Democratic Forces, they're all one and the same. They're all created by the intelligence agencies, and they just move them back and forth and pretend that, oh yeah, this is the terrorist group, this isn't the terrorist group. But they use Al-Qaeda in those countries now to remove the elected leader. Now, once the elected leader is removed, then anyone who's trying to remove the puppet government, well, it allows them to go after Al-Qaeda, because they call those people who want to remove the puppet government now Al-Qaeda, so they can use drones and everything else on them. So they figured out a way where they can use these terrorist groups to get rid of the elected leader. The terrorist groups leave the country, and the people who don't want the puppet government in there anymore, they just call them Al-Qaeda. I mean, this was the strategy, and it's worked throughout all these different countries. I mean, look what Ukraine. In Ukraine, they replaced the leader there, they put in a puppet government, and the southeastern people, they started calling them terrorists because they didn't like the new government. They use the same strategy over and over and over. Now, Q dropped a lot of different posts, a lot of intel. I'm going to read through some of them, and we're going to make sense of some of them. I'm not going to read through all of them because it'll take a very long time. I might split it up in many different reports. Now, he went on to say that, or he, she, group of people, money, power, control, people are simply in the way. They're slaves, they're sheep, pawns. Mass extinction events designed to decrease threat level of population. Now, we knew this from the beginning, that the central bankers, the deep state, they believe they're way above everyone. Laws don't pertain to them. People are meaningless. They're slaves. We can get rid of them. War was a great way of having a mass extinction event, and it would reduce the population. I mean, look at the Georgia Guidestones. They have it carved out there telling us that, they want to reduce the population. Gun control, they needed that because they can't have an armed population. To control them, you need a population that is not armed at all. Your voice does not matter. What they say goes. Then he went on to say that pharma, water, air, chemicals, push for home use cleaning, cancer, vaccines are bad, but not all of them. Tobacco, opioids, and food and things like that aren't, they've been messed with. Yes, this was to get you sick, make you docile, stop the thinking process, and basically, this is what they've been doing for a very long time. They've been injecting everyone with these vaccines. They've been messing with the food supply. They've been messing with chemicals in the air. They've been messing with the home use cleaning items. They're all toxic. And they've done this on purpose. And we see right now that Trump is making a move to change certain things, like the front of package nutrition labeling. Now, of course, they're saying he wants to get rid of nutrition labels. No, the nutrition labels are on the back. What they put on the front of the food is their marketing push. This is all natural. It's good for you. And most of the time, people only read the front of the box. They don't read the back where it says, oh, there's pool cleaner included in your cereal. There's other chemicals that you would never pick up and eat. He's trying to change that, and I think he's going to be going after vaccines. He's going to be going after food. I think he's going to be going after many of these different things. So let's read on. The Fed, Rothschild. Well, again, we know who they are. We know the Fed is behind a lot of this. The Rothschild, and he said enough is enough. And when we talk about vaccines and we talk about food and we talk about disease and we talk about all this stuff, what's very interesting is that a body was pulled from the Chattahoochee River in Atlanta. And this was a researcher from the Centers for Disease Control who went missing in mid-February. Now, he was working on Ebola and the Zika virus, which we know that this was put on by the intelligence agency to scare the population. Maybe he had information, maybe he had something, and they pretty much got rid of him. We know that this is what they do. And of course, they're making it into that, he was up for promotion and he was upset that he didn't get the promotion, but the CDC said, oh no, we did promote him. Well, it's very interesting that he was working on Zika and Ebola, and he just so happened to disappear, and he was in a river. That's very interesting. Let's move on here. We know that Trump is sending troops to the border. Q is saying, yes, troops are going to the border. Clown black ops, private funds raised how? Troops at border does what? impact to who? Sex traffic roadblock, children roadblock, drugs roadblock, guns roadblock. Now let's stop right there. We know what goes on at the border. We understand that there's sex trafficking going on at the border. Children are being pushed back and forth on the border. Guns are being fast and furious on the border. Drugs, we know definitely. And remember, the war on drugs was not a war against removing all drugs. It was a war to remove the competition because the CIA and the intelligence agencies and the deep state, they were running the drugs and they didn't want extra competition. That was why they had the war. And he went on to say that name we don't say AZ roadblock, which is John McCain, Arizona, Jeff Flake, Arizona roadblock, big money terminate in all capitals. The wall means more than you know. The fight for the wall is for so much more. Now, let's think about this for a second. Why is the wall just not a wall? Why does it mean more than everyone knows? Now, a lot of people think we're putting up the wall to stop all these refugees. No, that's one of the reasons, but that's not the reason. I mean, of course, CNN and all the rest, that's why they're saying the wall's going up. That's why out in public, Trump is saying the wall's going up. Remember what we've been discussing all along. How do you shut down the deep state? Think about what Russia did in Syria. They cut off all the funding to the Islamic State. How did they do that? Well, they found the oil convoys, which was not hard to do, where they were stealing the oil from Syria, bringing it up into Turkey, and they bombed the heck out of it, destroyed all of it. The funding stopped. The Islamic State started to shrink. They couldn't pay for anything. They couldn't bring in more recruits. They were stuck. The wall stops what? What has the deep state been doing? Well, drugs. They use that money to pay for their covert operations, to fund their operations. Sex trafficking, children, guns. All of this would be stopped. He's trying to choke out the funding to the deep state. It's not about stopping these refugees where the deep state right now is having this caravan of people come up here. And they're going to be pushing the idea that, yes, these people are coming up here and they want freedom, but that's not what it's about. The deep state right now is trying to stop the wall from being built. This is why they had the caravan move up, because they want to show the world, look, these people want freedom, and if you put up a wall, they will not be able to get freedom. But that's not what this wall is about. The wall is to cut off the deep state, to cut off their funding. And you have to do it in different pieces, because once you start shutting them down, you shut down the drug routes going back and forth. You put the guards at the wall. I mean, we already have the border guards going there, which is going to shut down a lot of what is happening. You put the wall up, it makes it very, very difficult to push their operations. Right now it's open and free. They can do whatever they want. They have many points where they can move this type of stuff back and forth. So he's trying to shut down the funding of the deep state. And eventually he's going to go right to the central bank. And this is the first part, because this will hurt them quite a bit. And then he's going to move on from there. Now, we also see that Trump has, back in post 801, now Q on February 21st, 2018, said U.S. Cyber Task Force important. And basically what he was saying at that time is that we needed a U.S. Cyber Task Force to lock down the government data, the processing, the information in government. Now, the reason why he wanted this, and we have to go back about 3 years, when Chinese hackers stole security clearance files and other sensitive personal information of some 22 million U.S. federal employees, cyber defenses at the Department of Interior, which hosted White House official of personnel management servers targeted in the theft, were still unable to detect some of the most basic threats inside Interior's computers networks, including malware actively trying to make contact with Russia. Now, what they've come to find through their investigation is that, and this took about 16 months or so, they found that nothing was locked down. All the fixes, all the security that was supposed to be implemented was not. And when this attack was discovered back in April of 2015, the department didn't even publish a lessons learned plan for its staffers based on the disaster. The OIG inspectors reported that Interior
started to draft an incident response plan that month to deal with future intrusions, but did not publish it until August 2017, 2 months after the OIG team had finished their lengthy field work. Now, let's think about this for a second. The systems were kept wide open. Russia, China were allowed access to the network. Who was president? Obama. Clinton was in office. They were allowing sensitive information to be stolen by China and Russia. What Q has been saying is that they have the evidence that Obama and Clinton and others were involved in Russian collusion, treason, allowing countries to steal our information, and they have the documentation. This is why Q said this is going to be important later, where they needed to put into place security, because they realized there was no security, and they realized it was kept wide open, just like Clinton's email servers, where they didn't have any security on those. The same thing was happening in government. This is why Q has been saying America for sale. So we can see right now, April, I believe, at this point, these sealed indictments, they're going to be broken. We're going to see many people, charges are going to be brought up against them. We're going to see arrests. It's going to start out slow, and it's going to pick up speed, but there's going to be a lot of information coming out, and we're going to see the hammer fall. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.